Hey, Reese here from the Point Music Podcast. Thanks for tuning into the podcast, and I hope you're really enjoying them. This episode is a special one. I spent a good hour chatting with my mate Rohan Nitschke. A lot of you would know, I'm in Bearfoot with Rohan, but he's also got his project Zero Theory, and his album is coming out on April 24th. So this is the reason why we had a chat. So heads up, there is some expletives in there because we are two mates and we haven't seen each other due to the current situation, Corona and stuff. We haven't seen each other for a while, so we have a good old chat and chuck a few F-bombs in there, so hopefully that doesn't offend you. And I really hope you enjoy this podcast. It was good fun chatting with my good mate Rohan. So without further ado, here we are live. Just let me do this. Mr. Nitschke.
Hey, man.
Ladies and gentlemen, Rohan Nitschke, my good
Hi.
friend, and Zero Theory. How are you doing, my man?
Good, man. Real good. Just chilling in old Blah Blah Town in the studio.
Still got you got a little doof community happening there too.
Yeah, I'm lucky I live with my partner and a friend who both share the same music taste as me, so we've been having our little sessions and doing the link up with everyone and having little live doofs and stuff.
Yeah, I caught that ISO session, man. That was sick.
That was really cool, man. And we had some really big people like Earthogen and Cosmogenic jumped on board, and it was like, man,
crazy,
it was really good.
So were they using because I don't think they were using the same setup as what you use though, because some weren't using Twitch or anything like that. They were just doing basically a Facebook Live thing. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. I think a few of the boys kind of were a bit slack and waited till the last minute and couldn't get it sorted in time because they left it till the day of, whereas me and Burbs and a few of the crew kind of got everything together and put our heads together in a group chat the week before, and we're like, right, let's all work out how we can do this proper and make it all good. And yeah, it worked out really cool.
You should start doing some more of those Twitch sessions just on your own, man. Have you seen how that operates?
Not really, no. I just got it basically to do that isolation doof thing we did. I had no intention of ever doing any live streaming or anything apart from the occasional phone Facebook video. And now that I've got Twitch and OBS, I'm like, oh, there's a lot of capacity here.
There's
Here to do more.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
And if you put up that sort of template and that sort of stuff, they set up a way of doing a tip jar in that. So there's a way of generating income via DJ.
I actually saw a video. One of the videos that I watched to learn how to set it up was a pretty well-known DJ, and he was sort of saying, he's like, man, this is like, I get more exposure doing this than I've ever done, even pushing the shit out of stuff on
crazy.
Facebook and that. Yeah, it's cool.
Technology. I was watching it was one day at work, it was dead quiet, so I basically just had a Twitch channel on there, and I was watching like this chick DJ from Canada, then this guy doing covers in his bedroom, and then another dude doing a full whack DJ set with all like psychedelic sort of lights going on, that sort of stuff. It was cool, and all just interaction. So
I haven't delved into it enough yet to see how their algorithms work, but if their algorithms are right, then I feel like it could be really good in terms of leading you to things that you are definitely going to have a real bit of a froth on, rather than you having to source them out like you do on some other platforms.
Should try it out. Let's see how you go. You have been busy, and you have an album.
Yes, my first ever solo album.
Took you a little while.
Yeah, I know. Well, the thing was, like, I've been interested in doing something like this since I was a teenager, and I used to jokingly say, like, when USB ports and cables first came out, I'm like, I wish my brain had a USB socket so that all the ideas that are in here I could just download. And kind of a couple of years ago realised that setting up a little home studio is kind of having a USB port attached to your brain, and all the ideas can come out. So yeah, it was something I'd wanted to do for ages, and it just sort of took. I'm terrible with technology. I'm 10 years behind everyone.
You adapted pretty quickly, man.
I only bought my first computer at 35 years old. This MacBook I'm on right now is my first ever computer. So it took a while, but once I got into it, I was like, wow, there's so much technology that can allow me to express the things I want to express in the way I want to do it, and not have to go and pay a fortune to other people to do it.
All right, so
not that I don't think there's value in doing that sometimes. If you're paying the right people, they can bring something out, but it's nice to just walk in here and flick a switch and just put down whatever comes out of my brain after.
Just go down the rabbit hole of whatever you want to do. So do you want to explain exactly? Because like you threw a curveball to me, man. Like when you gave me a listen to that album, I was expecting full dugga like full on, and I was bracing myself for it, just going, oh, like I love you, man, but I don't know if I can handle a whole album. Do you want to explain what you've done? Because it was completely not what I was expecting.
So when I started getting into electronic music a few years ago, and then realizing that the technology existed that I could potentially make some electronic music, initially the two genres that I was really drawn to, that I kind of liked to listen to live and wanted to have a go at making, was drum and bass and psytrance. And I had a go at both. I'm still making both. I still make a bit of drum and bass. I still make a bit of psytrance. I love it. It's a whole different thing to what I've ended up doing with the Zero Theory project. But I kind of felt like that those genres are quite extreme genres. They're very, like, you can't put psytrance on at 2 in the Arvo. Actually, no, me and my mates do. We do that. But yeah, like, just when your mates who aren't into it come over, you can't just put it on for background music. It's not that kind of music. And drum and bass is the same. Like, drum and bass at 10 on a Sunday morning when you're keen is good, but like when you're sort of waking up and hanging out with your dogs and stuff, it's not so good.
It's a bit hectic.
Dogs and your chick. And so I kind of was taking, I don't know, I just started taking tones and textures from those kinds of music and just slowing it down, kind of mashing it with my love of dub and reggae, as you know, we're in Bearfoot together, and sort of realised when I started doing that there was this whole genre out there called PsyDub or PsyBass that was already that. So I got into a lot of artists like Symbolico and Caddy Scintilla. Seeing Caddy Scintilla and Symbolico live was huge for me. When I saw those guys play, I was like, man, I really feel like anyone can go out at a doof and just rinse the crowd with heavy psy or drum and bass. That's easy to do, but for someone to play like really slow kind of dubby music and still be able to rinse the crowd and take them on this massive journey, just, I don't know, that appealed to me more both as a listener and what I wanted to do with music. So yeah, I just started taking elements of psy and drum and bass and then mashing it with dub, and what's come out is, like they call it psy bass, I think.
Yeah.
Psy dub or psy bass.
It was, when I was listening to it, I felt like you could easily either do a set alongside Jeswa, but also slot along someone like Double Ray. It wasn't the full-on sort of stuff. There is a little glitch element to it, and then you like you're saying, you got that dub, and the fat bass that comes in. There's a little bit of squelchy sort of stuff happening, and then
I when I've seen both Caddy Scintilla and Symbolico and even Kaya Project and a few artists like that, I've seen them at 10 o'clock in the morning, and I've seen them at 10 o'clock at night, and I've seen them at Dorfsum, I've seen them at smaller gatherings, and their music just resonates no matter where you are. It's just this nice slow kind of journey. And I just sat down one day, I was like, I want to make that. Like, how do I do that? And it's just been, the last 12 months I've just been like doing it, just experimenting
and basically built your own way of doing it. It's like
I'm definitely trying to make a bit of a cohesive sound. I feel like all the really good artists in that PsyDub genre have a sound that you can, like, if someone puts it on at a party or something, you're like, I know that Symbolico, or I know who, whoever that person is, like. And I'm trying to do that, but that's a whole nother trip in itself.
I would say that you do have your own sort of sound, because you've always sort of drifted towards the Middle Eastern sort of stuff. No matter what you do, it always, like, there's stuff that you did in Bridges where it snuck in.
Yeah, I played a sitar live at the Bridges once.
Yeah, and you could tell it was just creeping in there. I mean, we're both massive fans of the Tea Party as well, so you can sort of...
Yeah.
That influence just sneaking in there. So
well, it's funny you say that, because when I was making this record, I was listening to a lot of Tea Party again. I was really rediscovering like Edges of Twilight and Transmission, and being like, oh yeah, those melodies. Yeah, so good. Man, I can't wait till we get to go and see them again.
Well, that was supposed to be touring this year too.
Yeah,
that was supposed to be coming through, and Jeff Martin was doing one as well.
Yeah,
and I think he's rescheduled. So but you won't see me fanboy this time.
That was funny last time. He's great by himself too, though. Like, he's amazing. Great show.
Jeff Martin from the Tea Party, the singer. If you haven't seen him, check him out.
Yes.
So, with the album, you just explained the influences behind it, and how long did this bloody thing take you to actually put together?
Well, the closing track on the album, Sunflowers, was the first electronic music track I made when I got the computer, which was about 2.5 years ago, I think. Yeah. So that was actually a different version existed back then, but that's ended up on the record. So I guess it's like some of the songs have been ideas that have been right there from the start of me getting all the equipment to do this, and have just progressed and ended up on the album. Like I tend to revisit a lot of the early tracks I recorded now that I've got more knowledge of things like synthesis and production, like how to use compression and EQ and stuff properly. And so I've revisited a lot of old tracks. So I guess you could say the album really took 2.5 years, but I did put a big push on myself. Well, it would have been probably the start of the year, the first 2 months of the year. Before everything got hectic, I just put myself under a lot of pressure. I was like, if I don't sort of like pick, 8 or 9 songs and focus on them and get them done, I'm just going to end up with a hard drive full of unfinished shit and never putting anything out.
Yeah,
so
I know a few people like that.
Yeah, I didn't want to fall into that trap because it's an easy trap to fall into. So I just really sat down one day and was like, I just need to pick my 8 favorite tracks, or the 8 tracks I think are best sort of representative of where I'm at with this music right now, and just work on them flat out and get them finished and put them out. And so I was just coming home from work every day. I was lucky at the time I was working at Fence Pack still, and I was finishing at like 2:30 in the hour, so I'd come home, be home at 2:45. Like I said, it's 2 switches to turn on the studio, and everything, like all the synths, all the mixer and everything just turns on off 2 switches on the wall. And yeah, I would just sit in here and get shit done. And if I struggled with something, I'd leave it alone for a couple of days and work on something else. And yeah, I kind of just made it all happen. Made it all sort of come together in the last sort of 4 weeks of the process. And then one day I was like, "Fuck, I got an album."
Yeah.
Now I need to put it out.
When you went through the whole mixing process and that sort of stuff, was there just a sigh of relief when you got the last one done to the point where you just went, "Yeah, no, that's it, I'm done"?
Nah, I don't think they're ever done.
Yeah.
I know that it's a stereotype kind of thing to say, but I really don't feel like I did definitely, when I sat down and the last thing I did before I sent it to Ollie for mastering was to sit down and load all the wave files of each track into Logic and sort of work out the fades and overlaps and stuff and how it was going to flow as an album, and listen to it start to finish. And when I did that, I was like, yeah, I'm happy. I'm really happy. Every song's everything. I've got it. And now I listen to it, and it's been like a month and a half, and there's things where I'm like, fuck, I wouldn't mind just taking the tail off that kick drum a bit and stuff. Like, I don't know, but I think that's always going to happen. It's like, it's the same as being in a band. You listen to your albums you did when you were 15. You didn't know fuck all about guitar tone and stuff then, and you're like, what the fuck was I thinking? I've learned so. I wish I could do this again, but
same stuff
you
happens
can't.
with our own, like in Bearfoot, man. We listen to something and just going, you know what, we should have done this. There should have been an extra horn section in here, or we should have just like taken.
But it's done, and you can't change it, eh?
No, and you got to live with that decision and let it go, and just put it out, because people
focus on the future.
If people dig your stuff, they're gonna like it anyway, right?
Yeah, and I think sometimes us musicians and just creative types in general are guilty of being way too hard on ourselves and stressing about things that fucking no one out there is even going to know. Like, I was stressing about some EQ stuff and shit, and at times I'd have to like sit back and go, Rowie, the difference you're talking here is probably not even fucking audible to fucking anyone's ears who isn't fucking glued to a set of monitors. Like I'm probably not even hearing any fucking difference. I'm only seeing it in what I'm doing on the screen.
That's right, man. You
get really pedantic with stuff sometimes, and then I used to say that to people. I'm like, man, and sometimes it doesn't even matter what the fuck you think about your music, because it's not for you. Someone else is going to be listening to it, and they're probably not going to know or care about any of the stuff that you're caring about. They're probably just like, this is good. I like this.
So did you ever suffer from a bit of ear fatigue when you were going through this?
Yep, totally. I had a couple of real long sessions in that sort of period towards the end where I was pushing myself and in here for I did a 12-hour session in here one day, or 12 or 13 hours, and I just walked out and I was fucking deaf. I couldn't hear anything. My ears were just... And I purposely picked these monitors because I feel like they were going to be less fatiguing than my original choice, which was Yamaha HS8s. I've heard they're quite fatiguing on the ears, like the old Yamaha NS10s and stuff. Yeah. And my monitors are pretty good in terms of not fatiguing your ears too much, but after that period of time, it was just like a white noise in my ears, eh? And I was like, you got to stop, bro, because you're probably ruining good songs because you're not hearing things right.
That is it, man. Because with the mule stuff I've been doing, there's only 3 songs that I've been concentrating on for the past 3 months.
Yeah.
And I've still got 4 other songs there that I have barely touched, and I'm sort of just keep on picking away at these songs, and I'm just going, man, I'm gonna actually fucking hate, excuse my language, but I'm gonna really hate these songs if I don't let these go and just put them aside and work on something else. It's just
and that's the biggest thing I found is especially when you're getting fatigued with the song itself, turn it off. Don't listen to it for a fucking week.
Yeah.
And I would do that and then come back to that song a week later after going and not only working on a bunch of other music, but listening to a whole bunch of other music. And then you come back and it's like, boom, it just happens. But the actual physical fatigue on my ears when I was doing those sessions to finish the album was fucking crazy. And now I'm sort of trying to limit myself because it is easy to get in the rabbit hole in here sometimes. And I'm kind of trying to keep it at 6 hours. I think last weekend and the weekend before I did a couple of big ones that were like 6 hours. And after 6 hours, I was like, just feel my ears are getting a little tired now. So I'll just fucking shut it off and go and have a beer.
Yeah. Go for a walk, do a stretch, do something else. I usually go watch a movie or like go for a walk or do something. I would love to go to the gym again, but obviously that ain't gonna happen. Now your artwork, I'm gonna bring this up because this artwork is pretty sick. We're using it for the background for this chat, by the way.
Sick.
So I'll just bring the slide up. Who did that? Because that's cool as hell, man.
It's an artist he's either from the States or Canada. I'm not sure his name's Justin Toltemic.
Yeah.
How I got into him was the label I approached a bunch of labels to put the record out, and when I decided on a label, I sent the album plus the artwork that I'd done myself. And I'm not a fucking graphic artist. I don't even, like I said, I only got a computer at 35, but I put together some art that I thought was pretty cool and kind of represented what I wanted in the album cover. And Gabriel from Alta Records emailed me back and he goes, I've got this image by this artist and I think it just really suits you, like the title and the whole sort of feel of your album. And I can license it, like it'll only cost me like $300 or whatever to license it to use it. And I was like, I don't know, like I was a bit of that artist ego of like, but I like the one I made and I want to use, it's my concept and stuff at first. And then the more I looked at it, the more I was like, this is a really good piece of artwork. And I was aware of Toltemic's work too through, he designs for a clothing company called Thrader, which a bunch of my mates wear. And I've had Thrader's like Duff clothes basically, like Alex, they license Alex Gray art and stuff like that. And he's a designer for so he's a designer for Thrader. Like all of their stuff is basically visionary art on wearable clothing and stuff. Yeah. And so I was aware of his stuff, and I was like, that's pretty cool to be able to have this dude's art, and it does suit it. So I was like, fuck it, let's do it.
there's a slight sort of fractal thing happening with it there, and I just love all this organic sort of stuff blending with.
That when the more I looked at it, the more I noticed that, because at first what I wasn't really keen on with it versus my original, I was like, I wanted something very organic on the cover, and it just looked like a bunch of buildings to me, like a city, and I was like, that's kind of like at odds with the imagery I want. Yeah. But then the more I actually started to look at it, the more I started to see all those kind of trees and stuff.
There's a lot going on here, man. And then you got the little figure down in the front. So like a monk thing, I don't know.
Yeah, samurai or something, and he's arriving at this big weird thing. Like it was perfect. Good job, Gabe.
Yeah, man, no, that's cool as. That'll look pretty sick when it comes up. And when's the album coming out?
24th. So next week.
Next
Thursday, yeah. Although the label's in Canada, so he might be releasing it Canada time, which it'll be Saturday, the day after. Yeah, it'll be like the Friday or the Saturday or whatever here. Like, but 24th official anyway.
Because there's a few big albums coming out like locally, or Brisbane and us and that sort of stuff too on the 24th. And originally I actually had a Mules track coming out, and I was going to go the 24th. I'm like, nope.
Yeah.
I'll wait till the week after, and let that all sink in, and then we'll do it that way.
Yeah.
But that's cool. The shitty thing was, you were supposed to play basically your first proper festival.
Yes,
Rabbits, yeah.
Yeah, Rabbits Eat Lettuce. That was a bit of a... I don't know. I was just saying on the weekend, I was like, that was weird. I finally get into this scene proper and get a good gig, and there's a fucking global pandemic. Like you can't write that shit.
Odds, man?
You can't write that shit. That was devastating. But I'm just really stoked that I got in the first place. I applied for a couple of festivals that were happening in that sort of Doof realm, and didn't really expect to get much of a response because no one knows who the fuck I am. I didn't have an album or anything out really, bar a couple of my earlier tracks on SoundCloud, which weren't great. And I just sort of didn't expect to get in, and then Rabbits Eat Lettuce just emailed me back. I was at work. I still remember I was outside having a cigarette at work, and they emailed me and were like, "We'd love to have you fill this format." And I was just like, "Fuck, that's awesome." And Rabbits last year was the first time I'd been to Rabbits, and I went with a bunch of my good mates, and it was absolutely incredible. Like, I know there was a lot of controversy about what happened afterwards and stuff, but as someone who was at the festival, I can't speak highly enough for how well organised that festival was. They had like medics and ambos and stuff everywhere, and safe party people, and like a like consciousness place to go and sort of learn about the harm you can do to yourself with drugs and stuff. So they went above and beyond in all of those regards, and for what ended up happening, I thought that was pretty shit, because I thought it was such a great festival, and then to get accepted this year after having such a great year there last year, I was like, oh man, like I can't believe that this year I'm going to be the dude up there playing the tunes to all of my mates. Like when I was there last year, I just
didn't they move it up to the up to Amamore or something?
To Land Cruiser Park, Gymna. Gymna's apparently, like I've only been sort of involved in the doof scene around here for like 5 or 6 years now, but apparently Land Cruiser Park used to be the spot where all the doofs happen, like Queensland version of Earthcore and early Earth frequencies and stuff. And yeah, I went to a gig Quantum Release out there a couple of years ago. It's a good spot, like really good spot, middle of nowhere, surrounded by trees. Set up some speakers.
Yeah. Dig deep and go down into doof territory and disappear.
But yeah, no, that was a bit of a crusher, but it is what it is. And they're apparently doing a combination of their other event, Bohemian Beat Freaks, and Rabbits Eat Lettuce combined together in November with bigger capacity. So hopefully I might still be able to get on there, and that'll be cool.
Man, we're going to see a barrage of just like festivals happening from like the end of September through until...
It's going to be so sick. I can't wait.
Get festival fatigue a little bit, because...
Fuck off. I'll never get festival fatigue.
Well,
I live for that shit.
Did you see that they reckon they're going to go ahead with Big Sound this year?
Yeah, I saw that, and I was like, ooh, that's a bit early.
They don't have internationals coming through, because Big Sound's always like Australian artists being shot to outside the country or to bigger companies within Australia. So I can see it going ahead, but they say it's going to be different. I don't know how.
Who knows? Corona could disappear, and it could be normal by then. We don't know. It's so unpredictable at the moment. Like,
I mean, I went for the first. I touched salt water for the first time in like 2 months, and I was like overwhelmed.
I'm lucky. I'm pretty close to the beach and river. I still get to go.
We're not, and you're supposed to be in the suburb, but luckily my daughter was moving to like Maroochydore, so we just went, screw it, we're gonna go down, and no hassle. But there's so many people on the beach just walking and doing their exercising. There was no one sunbaking, but my God, it felt good to touch water. Yeah, man, the salt water just definitely rinses you off in a different way to anything else, eh? Man, I felt like I was gonna bloody cry. Like, oh, I miss this so much. Yeah. So, got your album. You've done festival applications, that sort of stuff. You reckon you're going to keep pushing for that? I mean, because we're going to be... Barefoot's going to be pretty busy in the next like 12 months too. So it's going to be the typical situation I get myself into of trying to balance a whole bunch of fucking shit at once. And my luck, there'll be like Draw Card and Battleships will fucking ring up at the same time and go, oh yeah, you want to come on tour? And I'll stupidly say yes, and fucking fuck my life. Cursing. Yeah, I don't know. The zero theory thing is really important to me because it's something I've wanted to do for so long, and I also feel like with what's transpired already and kind of the excitement between a bunch of the crew about the album, I think it's something that's going to do well. Like, I think I'm just definitely going to achieve what I want to achieve with it, which is really just to go and play good slots at good festivals and rinse people with some worldy bass music, like. So, and it's very simple too. It's an easy thing to pursue too because it's so simple, because there's not me and 10 other people involved and PR. It's so simple. Like, I make tunes in my fucking bedroom studio. I put them out, and if people like them, then I go and play a gig, and I take a laptop and a DJ controller, and that's it. It's fucking it's plug and play. Bedroom studio is that's a very sort of layman's term, because I've seen images of your bedroom studio, and it's not just it's like, getting there. It's not just a laptop and like one little freaking like audio logic controller or something like that, man. You've got
it's getting serious.
You got some pretty wicked gear happening there.
I'm this weekend on Sunday. I'm going to be building a rack mount area under the mixer for some rack stuff.
Yeah.
Big multi-channel interface and compressor and EQ and stuff.
You use an analog desk too, don't you?
Yeah, to an extent. The main reason I bought that desk, it's a 1974 PV 1200S, and the main reason I bought it is, I'm just looking at it, it's so sexy. The main reason I bought it is, one, because it's sexy and it looks great. Two, actually the main reason I bought it is because it's got a spring reverb tank in it.
Yeah.
And PV reverbs from the 70s, I have owned a couple of PV amps from the 70s, and the spring reverb is just that really nice one where you can sort of like flick the edge of the desk and it makes that beautiful splash kind of sound. And when you run things like my hardware synth through it, man, it's gorgeous, and vocals sound amazing through it. You just turn the spring up a little bit and it's like, so I use that mainly for the reverb, and then I also use an analog, a digital Roland synth for most of my sub-bass stuff. And because it's digital, it lacks that kind of warmth and grit of an analog synth, so I run it through the desk and crank the preamp up and use the EQ on the desk, and you can actually get it sounding like a proper fucking analog synth. It's a bit of a, I don't know, like circuit bending kind of thing in a way. Like,
would you incorporate like live bass into it, like something like Square Pusher does or anything?
I think so. Like, I've got a little bit of live bass and guitars and stuff on the record. You probably can't really hear it because there's so much other stuff going on. But
there's a lot going on.
Yeah, like the plan for the album launch was going to be to actually play this all live with the full band and have all the electronic stuff mashed in with the band. So yeah, there'll definitely be more of that. And one of the things I always sort of thought was, if I did get to the stage where I was, getting like a kind of bit of money back from it, from gigs and stuff like that and sales or whatever, that I would be keen on putting together a band to do bigger slots at festivals and stuff. Like if you've seen Opio do the Opio band, and like Grouch with his Grouch and Dub and stuff, like those guys are amazing by themselves, but when you see them with the band of amazing musos playing that music with still all the kind of cool electronic elements but that organic element as well, that shit is fucking where it's at. So I'd love to do that.
Something like that would be pretty awesome, man.
Live drums is a huge dynamic changer, I think. I've seen a lot of artists with playing kind of like electronic organic mashup music with live drums and without live drums, and man, when you have drums, there's just something about it, Like it's just adds this dimension. Well, Gypsy's really into it. Gypsy's like, nah, if it doesn't have fucking live drums, I don't want to know about it.
Well, because Jeswar does it like with the Jeswar and Friends sets, right? So then you got Rob on the kit. And then like guys like yourself, and you got Kane bringing some sax into it, and just guests coming through there, even Asher doing some
Asher and Dan Dyslexic doing the double vocals and stuff, and we had Casey Outlook with Earth Freak this year. Yeah, that was cool, man. That's what's really cool about that Just Ryan Friends project. It's sort of like there's a fairly stable lineup, but it's also like any of our mates who are available. It's like, do you want to fucking come and play? Like, it's really, really collaborative.
So do people like sort of vibe off that live drum sort of setup?
Fuck yes! At Earth Freak both years, we got really shafted on our slot. We played 3 p.m.
Yeah, you're playing.
We played 3 p.m. We played 3 p.m. on the first day of the Friday last year, which was sort of when most people are sort of arriving there, like they're just coming from work and stuff, and we still ended up with like a solid crowd. I still look at the photos and videos and be like, man, that was pretty good. And then this year we got bumped even earlier to like 1 o'clock or 1:15 on the Friday, and I was just thinking like, fuck, man, all my mates are still at work, like no one's going to be here, and it just pumped again. Like it's really attractive music if you're walking past, because it's got all the big thump and sub bass and all the glitchy stuff that Jeswar does really well too. Yeah. And then you've got that, you actually hear people smashing drums and guitars and stuff. And yeah, it's really like, people always say, they're like, man, we were just walking past, and it's like, yes, this is a good vibe, and it's really an attractive thing.
So you reckon a lot more people, given like we've got time to experiment and shit right now, basically, I brought this up with every person I've spoken to on this podcast, is how musicians are adapting to this sort of situation and how things are changing. And I've said several times now, we're going to see some weird, wild, wacky shit come out of this.
Totally, it's going to be like, you know, the summer of love in the '60s, where people started taking acid and picking up guitars and plugging them into wah pedals and all of that shit. There's going to be this whole thing of like, people are discovering technology now that they never knew existed, because they didn't have the time to to find out that it existed. Now they got the time. Like, it's the same as what I was saying with me with Twitch and OBS and that. Like, I had no idea that kind of stuff existed until 2 weeks ago, and I had the time to sit here and go, what the fuck is this? How does it work? Oh, I can live stream my set. Sick. That's awesome. Like,
So you reckon you're going to live stream your album when it gets launched?
Yeah, I think I'll probably do a live stream of it, like a talk through where I'll play the tracks and sort of spend a couple of minutes in between each track, sort of telling people how I made the track, what the inspiration was, and what kind of like narrative I'm trying to convey with the melodies. Because one thing about the album is it's very heavy on melodies for an electronic album, and I think that's one of the trickiest things about instrumental music where there's no vocals, is trying to convey a narrative with only melodies is really hard. And I tried really hard to sort of, make at least people feel certain emotions and stuff in the record. There's songs that definitely have a sadder, more melancholy tone, and there's songs that are more like upbeat, I'm ready to have a stomp, and I think to be able to do that with our vocals is tricky as fuck. Like, so I'd like to talk people through the process of making the songs, and also like what I was kind of feeling, so maybe when they listen to it, they can sort of get into my headspace.
It's interesting with us both being in the same band, and usually a lot of the time it's like Ash has come up with something and we just go along with it and go, yeah, cool, and then put our element into it, and we got to also not think about it, but at the same time try and figure out where Ash was coming from in that song, like what was he trying to do. But with your stuff, with your solo stuff, what kind of mindset do you go into when you're creating this sort of stuff? Does it just a spur of the moment, I'm going to go in the studio, I'm just going to create something, I'm just going to jam along with it and see where it goes? Or you're in the shower all of a sudden you just go,
there's kind of two ways that it happens with me. One is that I get influenced by listening to or seeing something. So like I said, the first time I saw Symbolico live, I went home. Well, actually, not the first time I saw him. The first time I saw him and had sort of listened to his music and knew who he was, which was at Boom Festival in Portugal in 2018. I heard that set and just kind of retained so much information that I was thinking when I was watching it. I remember getting home a couple of weeks later and being like, right, I was thinking about how the fuck did he make that sound, and I need to learn how to do that, and just all these little ideas that made me really champion at the bit to write a song. And the first song I sat down kind of came about because I was so inspired by seeing him live that I was like, I want to make music like that, and I need to work out how to do it. And then the other way, which is kind of what's happening more and more lately, and which is probably what's more all over the album now, is I just get inspired by things that I see or whatever happening. I know it's kind of cliche to say that, but like a really good example is I started working on this song last weekend called Musicala Sunset.
Is that the one you shared on Facebook?
Yeah, the real Eastern one.
Yeah. That was cool.
Yeah, so I started working on that, and that came about because we had a 4-day weekend, obviously. Yeah. We're bored as fuck because we couldn't go anywhere, and the girls were doing a bunch of stuff, and I was like sitting on the couch on YouTube, and I'm like, what do I want to watch? And I came across a guy, Ross Kemp. Ross Kemp. I came across the Ross Kemp in Afghanistan series, which I'd watched years ago, like maybe over 10 years ago when he first went to Afghanistan. And his style of investigative journalism is pretty full on. Like he nearly gets himself shot a bunch of times when he's in Afghanistan, covering the war there and stuff. And it, like, I don't know, the kind of whole politics of the war and everything interested me enough to make me just sit down and watch the whole series. And I feel like he's a very great journalist, not only because he throws himself into it, because he doesn't really have a preformed opinion about anything. He's there to like be on the ground and fucking learn about what's going on and stuff. And that really intrigued me. And the whole time I was watching, I was getting more and more interested in Afghanistan because I was like, it's a fucking beautiful country. Like some of the countryside they're walking through is just like absolutely lush. And if you took away the war and the political problems and the poverty and stuff, like it would be a beautiful country.
And the poppy field.
And so, whilst looking at the country and thinking, especially this area, Musicala, where he was in this one episode, I was like, that looks like it would have just been the most beautiful old kind of city town before the war. And then whoever had scored that episode was just nailing it with like the music. And I remember just hearing a bunch of melodies, and like we were saying before, I already like Eastern melodies and Eastern instrumentation anyway, but I really just something in me was like just go into the studio and kind of make music based on listening to the soundtrack of that and also what was going on in that and in that place in that documentary. So I walked in here and I sat in here for fucking 6 hours, and that song that I posted the video of, which is about half of what the song will end up being. I think that just fell out of me. It literally just fell out of me. It was just what I'd watched and seen, and it was a very heavy doco series to watch too. Like there's soldiers that get killed pretty close to him and stuff, and it's a real reminder of how shit war is and how stupid some of the things that the world is fighting over are. And it really moved me a lot, and I think that came out in the music, and that's how most of the songs on the album were. There were times where I'd be doing something or experiencing something or whatever, and I just felt the urge to go in the studio after that experience and try and soundtrack that in a way or whatever.
It's like a musical vomit in a sense, really, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And that's how most of my songs start. It's just I'll experience something, and it's like, okay, I need to go and put that experience down in the music. I mean, that's probably how everyone writes a fucking song. But
yeah, I it's pretty much me. Just sort of like I'll probably have my acoustic bass just next to the couch, and I'll just I'll pick it up, look at it, and go, all right, fingers. Show me something, and I'll just be doodling something along, and then all of a sudden I go, there's something there I could use, and then
save.
I'll basically put my phone down, quickly record it, and then I'll just go back and listen to it a little bit later, and then do the whole mules thing with it, and then I'll show the other guys, and I'll just go, this bit here shouldn't be like that, but the rest of it's sick. And we go, all right, cool, there's a song, easy.
Yeah. I sometimes come in here and have a jam. Like, I've got a template set up in Logic with a bunch of my favourite sort of instruments and drums and stuff like that. And I'll often come in here and have a jam. But I don't know, I feel like sometimes I end up just going off on a jam tangent and enjoying just playing funky Hammond organ or whatever. Because I think, like, jamming, I'm not a keys player, so I'm still learning how to play keys. I think jamming is the best way to learn to play keys. You just select a style of music and select an instrument that's kind of what suits that style, and you just go and jam. But if I want to do that, it doesn't lead to a song. It leads to me just jamming a lot, and then at the end I'm like, shit, I'm a bit better at playing Hammond organ. Like,
I did that the other night because I haven't played my 6-string in a while, so I decided, I'm going to slap at a bass for a little bit, and I just wrote a little funky little tune, and I listened back to it. I've got to try and keep that line. That line's sick, but
that's why having Logic and all that is good, though. That's why having Logic, because you can put it down, and somewhere down the line it might find a home somewhere, and if it doesn't, at least you saved it. I think it's always better to put all your ideas down, because you can always delete them later if you don't use them, than to not put them down and then later on think, fuck, I wish I put that down.
I actually have a little folder on in my backup drive as song sketches, and basically I just chuck stuff in there, and I'll go back through it and I'll go, I remember that song, and I might take a bit from it.
Yeah.
It's like a notebook, really.
Yeah.
So today is Friday, April 17th, which is now Oz Music Day, Oz Music T-shirt Day.
Yeah.
You're repping something, are you? That singlet's seen some freaking time, man.
Shit, yeah, man. I just actually put a post on Facebook about it tonight. So I bought this singlet. If anyone missed that, it's a Sticky Finger singlet. I bought it at Woodford in 2011. I'm pretty sure it was 2010, 2011 Woodford, which was the heinous mud year.
Yeah.
And that was Sticky's first year also. And they played a tiny little stage in the middle of nowhere, kind of where I can't even remember what's there now, Circadia or something. I don't know, but it was called Trailer Trash, and it was basically a bunch of caravans around the outside of a clearing, and Sticky Fingers played in one of the caravans. Yeah. And they were fucking great. The lineup that afternoon was Sticky Fingers, followed by Kingfisher, followed by Cooey. So it was a fucking epic arvo. And yeah, Sticky just blew my mind. They were so good. I went straight to the merch desk and bought their singlet. And yeah, like I said, it was a year or two later or whatever, I ended up playing after them and meeting them and hanging out with them. I thought they were great dudes. I know they've attracted a lot of controversy over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And some of it well-deserved, some of it totally undeserved, whatever. It's not my place to judge. I don't know them that well, but I still really like their music. And the fact that this shirt or singlet has lasted 9 years absolutely blows my mind.
So I remember you telling me a story one time that both the Bridges manager, Mikey, and Sticky's manager at the time, both decided that you two were not supposed to tour together because they just... Pretty much.
They were sort of... Mikey was a great manager with the Bridges. He was really good at sort of like listening to what we wanted and going out and making it happen. And we sort of said, man, at the time, Sticky were sounding nothing like what they're sounding like now. They were a lot more that reggae rootsy kind of...
Sydney reggae sort of...
And the Floating Bridges at the time were sort of all over that kind of rootsy reggae kind of meets rock stuff that we did in our own kind of weird, unique way. And a lot of people had said to us, man, that would be a really great tour package. And we'd said, man, that would be a really great tour package. And Mikey was communicating with Neil Hunt, their manager. And one thing he did say to me once when we were having a few beers, he's like, yeah, we were both like, man, it would just be a liability of a tour. Like, because I'm under the impression Neilo was sort of like, oh, your dude's pretty responsible and shit. And Mikey was like, no. And we know what those dudes are like. And I mean, that year at Woodford that we played after them at New Year's, a couple of those dudes came back to our camp afterwards, and we were pretty loose Woodford party critters, but those dudes were on par, if not crazier. Yeah. Like, I definitely sat there that night and was like, this would be a fucking liability. If we toured together, we would not get anything done. We probably wouldn't show up for any of the shows. Like, yeah. So yeah, it was kind of funny because years later when they really blew up and shit, it was like, fuck, it would have been pretty cool to have that on my resume, but at the same time, it would have been a fucking disaster.
Well,
like,
we've both played in bands that like have had bands support us and they've just gone on to do stupid things. Like Ocean Alleys both supported Bridges and Kindred and Bearfoot.
We actually gave them some of their first shows when they were like just of age to play licensed venues and stuff. It was crazy.
Yeah, and then you got like Sticky Fingers, but there's it just boggles the mind like as to why something works and why something doesn't.
Yeah, people often say to me, they're like, man, do you get the shits that all these bands that used to like open for you and shit are like, you know, touring the world and making heaps of money and shit? And I'm like, nah, I'm so happy. I'm so happy for most of them, especially like Ocean Alley were the most nice fucking just awesome, genuine little young fucking critters when we met them. They were just frothing. The first couple of gigs they played with were shit. We played the King Street Brewhouse in Sydney and there was fucking nobody there. Great venue, but just too far from the front of the venue down to where the bands played, so people didn't even know there was a gig going on kind of thing.
Yeah. And
they were just still stoked to be there, stoked to be playing. They were killer. They were absolutely killer. They came out and opened with a Mattis Yahoo song. I think it was C2C off the Live Stubbs album, the opening track.
Yeah.
And I was just like, whoa, these guys are sick. And so with bands like that, I sit there and I'm like, man, I'm so happy for those dudes. They were so cool and they were so just happy to be doing what they're doing, that the fact that they're getting to do that for a living now is amazing. I think that's just incredible. But yeah, it's a mindfucker that some of the bands we've played with and stuff over the years, what they're doing now, it's just like, holy shit, I never would have picked that. Eh?
No.
I kind of picked Ocean Alley though, because like they just had I don't know, it was like an aesthetic and everything with how like their show was just like captivating to watch. They were all like good looking young dudes and they played really great tunes and they all had really good gear too and sounded great, and it was just like, man, people don't get into this, there's something wrong with the world.
I wasn't really impressed with them when I saw them with Kindred.
That was when they were in their little like drinking too much stage. I kind of heard about that.
Yeah, they were actually not cool backstage.
I remember Brian from Soul Bar telling me he had a whole bunch of shit going where they trashed a hotel and stuff and were real kind of drunken idiots and stuff, and that absolutely blew my mind because it would have been a year before that we were playing with them in Sydney and they were so cool, and I was like, nah, you can't be talking about the same guys. But I guess everyone goes through that stage when you start doing well, you're getting free beers every night and you start getting a bit of ego. It's not even ego. Sometimes it's just like having a bit of fucking fun and taking advantage of the fact that when you're clocking on for work every night, they hand you a carton of beer. Like,
yeah, see, the Bridges are notoriously known for their partying.
Yeah, that was
everyone that sort of gets to a level, man, that they will do that sort of stuff. So it's no surprise. And like next time I saw Ocean Alley, I was like, okay, these guys are on freaking key. And then we hung out with them briefly at Big Pineapple that year, and they played just after us, I think, on the other stage, because when we opened the station and then we had Ocean Alley straight after us, and they were vibing what we're doing, we're vibing off them. Yeah, so
I actually went and had a catch up with them that year and gave one of them acid.
Don't do drugs, people.
Let them do you.
Let them do you. But me and you, like, because we've a lot of people won't know that, but we actually used to be in a metal band together a long time ago. I actually one of my daughters actually asked me to look for some photos of her. And I was going through my backup drives, and I found that one gig that we did on Australia Day at the Sands Tavern supporting Melodicy, I think it was.
Yeah,
And
I remember that.
You got up there with a Australian flag wrapped around you with no shirt on, just getting loose.
2009 Patriotic
No, it
Rally.
was before. I think it was before that. I think it might have been 2008.
Oh, was it that long ago?
Yeah. But it was pretty weird seeing that sort of stuff. But
I've actually got, just so you know too, in my studio here somewhere in a box under the mixer, I've got the comic book you made for the Tech Sim album release thing.
I think I've seen that somewhere as well. I found I gave the whole. I was moving around and I still had a whole box full of CDs. I was like, here, Wade, you can have that.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I've still got one here somewhere. Yeah, crazy. We've been doing this shit a while.
Oh, it doesn't feel like that long, but at the same time, it does feel like a freaking eternity. But me and you, we've got some weird, funny stories. We could fill like 3 hours full of shit easily.
Do you remember the date of your first gig? I do.
Date of my first gig?
Yeah.
Of which band?
You'd like the first gig you ever played? I remember the date, June 27th, 1998. Malulabar Pub, playing for a band that a guy from church was in called Panorama.
All right.
Yeah, and my first gig, me and Kale. Basically, the band broke up, and the bass player still wanted to honour the commitment to the gig because it was a good gig.
Yeah.
And recruited 12-year-old Kale and 15-year-old Rowie to play bass and drums, and he switched over to guitar, and we did a gig, and that was my first gig.
Mine
Crazy.
In 1994 sometime.
Yeah, right. I forget you're a bit older.
Yeah. Wild Wombats was the band name. I only did 2 gigs with them, as far as I remember, and I'm pretty sure it might have been a school gig, just during lunchtime or something like that.
Yeah. Those lunchtime gigs were sick fun, though, eh?
Yeah. I mean, Elysium... here's a little fun fact for a lot of people out there. Elysium merged into Melodicy, and then Melodicy has 2 members going to Dead Letter Circus. Yeah. Long story. We used to do lunchtime gigs and that, and then the biggest one of those gigs I did was actually a blue light disco.
Yeah, right.
We actually played
at the PYC.
No, at the Nambour Civic Centre.
Hungerfoot. Oh, yeah. I know the one.
And we had a girl get up on stage at one stage, and we thought she was vibing what we're doing, and she just yelled in the microphone, "We're going to hear some proper music," and we're like, "Oh." Ouch.
It's funny because when you're that young and you're doing it, you think you're killing it. You just think you're killing it. And now I look at, I got a bunch of videos from those late 90s era where me and Kale were playing in bands and stuff, and we just thought we were killing it. And I watch the videos now, and I'm like, oh, fuck, it's a bit rough, eh?
See, I remember the first time seeing you, and that was in Red Letter Day.
At the PYC gig.
PYC, and I was in Henry's Science Project. And
Kickback 98.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, I remember. I've still got a poster for that.
Because you were doing Metallica covers.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yep.
That was what I was into at the time. All I wanted when I discovered Metallica, I was all about Metallica. If you didn't want to play Metallica covers, you weren't in my band.
We were too busy getting into the whole new metal vibe.
Yeah, man, you guys were very, very fucking ahead of the game with that, like.
Yeah, but yeah. There's a long story that goes into why that band didn't work.
Yeah, I remember you guys. I heard you guys before. I heard like Limp Bizkit and all that stuff that was, and I don't know. I'd heard Korn, but like not really gotten heaps into them. And when I heard you guys, I was like, "What the fuck is this, man?"
Kind of like a cross between Korn meets Hootie and the Blowfish, which is a really bizarre combination when you think about it. But basically, that's what the singer sound like was Hootie and the Blowfish. So yeah, gross. But fun at the same time, and I don't regret playing that band because that band. I thought
you guys ripped, man. That PYC gig, I was just like, "Fuck, these guys are sick, and they've all got such good gear."
I was playing like Canora bass, which I had whenever. I've since found out that Canora bass is worth a lot of money.
Is that little jazz bass thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a little fun thing. Like we're gonna do a little Bearfoot nostalgia thing. When we went and did Sydney, I think it was the second time.
Yeah.
So that was without our manager, Matthew. And that when we stopped at the music shop that was in Bondi.
Yes.
To get you guys some strings, you and Asher some strings.
Yeah.
And when I walked into that store and I saw in the corner there was 2 guitars that looked whack. And I went, they're kind of cool. Let's go have a look at it. And there was Canora branding on them. And I went, I've got a Canora. And then I looked at the price tag and I went, they're $3,000.
You're like, I've got a Canora.
What? So I ended up having to talk to the guy behind the counter, and the guy that owns the actual shop came out because he heard me talking about Canora. I got a Canora bass. It came out, and it turns out he's from Woodford, and he's just gone. Don't get rid of that. Don't get rid of it. Whatever you do, don't get rid of it. And I looked it up. Yeah, it's this thing that I got for $150 is worth a lot more than that.
This is the whole thing about those old Japanese instruments and stuff. I had a bunch of like Strat copies and stuff in the early 2000s, like a Fernandez Strat and what was the other one? It was like a Samick or something, and they were old Japanese ones, and I had no idea. You'd pick them up for like $100 at the pawn shop, clean them up, throw some strings on them, play a few gigs on them, and sell them for $150 and be stoked. They're worth like a fucking $1,000 now and shit. It's crazy, eh?
I recently saw another one of those Ibanez ones that you smashed on stage.
Oh, I've got that in here too.
All right.
With all the graffiti. Yeah, fuck man.
Fun story. It was Tech Sim's supposedly last gig, and it actually wasn't because we ended up supporting Dead Letter Circus not that long after that. But Roey's just like the last song. Roey's just gone. You know what? Rock and roll, and he's had this Ibanez, this sweet. Didn't Jimmy Guitars give you that one?
Yeah, so the story behind that guitar is Jimmy Guitars sold it to me for $120, and I just didn't think much of it. Even though now that I didn't know a lot about guitars then, and it did the job. Yeah. Now I remember it, and I'm like, oh my god, that thing played amazing. It sounded amazing as shit. Turns out they're worth quite a bit of money and quite rare and shit. But I smashed it, and the reason I did is because I fully remember like. It was my last gig, so I lifted it up over my head, and I was just sort of like going, like, thanks guys, this has been amazing.
Cheering you on
and then it was like all the Bridges dudes were down the front, and Reese Hunter was just like, smash it, and I was just like so caught up in the moment that I was like, and everyone's like, yeah. Kale's like, yeah, fucking smash it, bro, and I'm just like, boom, like, and I just did it, and then it turns out it was a really nice guitar and worth quite a bit of money, and because they're actually a one-piece guitar, not just a set neck or a through neck. It's like the whole body and neck is one piece.
Yeah, it was pretty wicked, and you kept the splinters. I remember because you found the headstock for it, and there was a few splinters around as well.
Yeah, I've got the headstock and the splinters and the body in the studio here. Like, it's got some funny graffiti on it, eh?
Yeah, that was whack.
It's got all the signatures of the dudes that were in Sunk Loto. What was their other band called after that? Electric Horse.
And speaking of which, I actually heard it spun me out that you're just saying that because Jason.
Don't tell me Sunk Loto. Come on.
No, Jay Brown. Jay Brown, the singer, Jay.
I don't know. I can't even remember.
Yeah,
it's been that long.
He's actually brought out a single.
Yeah, right.
It's really like alt country.
Yeah.
It was good. It was good. Yeah. Because you got to remember too that he's like the same age as us now.
Yeah, true.
And we forget that.
Does this mean I need to buy a banjo?
No. You're going down your route, that sort of stuff. But it was actually kind of his voice is deeper. But
cool.
Then
he had a great voice.
Electric Horse, Sunk Lotto, man. But I actually, as soon as I heard that, I went straight back and went and found a Sunk Lotto. I went and found Vinegar Stroke, and I was like, this is the song, man.
I would fucking pay good money to go and see those guys right now. I'd pay like if we could go to a gig right now, I'd pay $100 to see Sunk Lotto any day, any day of the week. Yeah, man. I froth those dudes. Like they were so perfect for that time. You know, they were doing like new metal when new metal was just starting to fucking peak, and they were doing it in a really uniquely East Coast of Australia kind of way too. Like they didn't sound like all the US bands and stuff. They didn't sound like anyone else, like Super Heist or anyone else. Like they were their own thing.
Yeah.
They were their own thing, man. Like. Do
you remember what their original name was?
Oh no, I don't.
Messiah.
Yeah, right.
I remember seeing that. Well, man, I'm showing my age here, but I remember walking into, I think it was HMV, and seeing the actual single. I went, oh, what's this, some kind of Christian rock band? And I went, oh, holy crap, these guys are pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So, they've gone and changed the name to Sunk Lotto or Loto, however you're supposed to pronounce it, and released Vinegar Stroke, and I was like, oh, these guys are amazing.
That first EP, the green one, fuck. Every song on that's a banger, eh? Lift, Porcelain Buddha, like so many good songs.
But even the album that came after that, I mean, I didn't really get into the second album, the one where they went a bit Mudvayne kind of sort of style.
Yeah.
But the one that had Sunken Eyes on it and Lift Redone and a few other ones on there, it was an incredible album for its time, and yeah.
Big Picture Lies.
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still got
Yeah.
it.
Great record. Great record. Sunken Eyes, man. I just actually watched the video clip for Sunken Eyes recently, and it's a bunch of footage shot at Big Day Out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fuck, man. That is great footage, eh?
I know.
So good. Makes me miss Big Day Out.
To a degree. I mean, I did go to the last one that was at Gold Coast where Pearl Jam headlined, and that was the first big day out I've attended in since 1999 or 98.
Oh, really? You didn't go for that long?
Yeah, I didn't like. Well, both me and you suffer like high social anxiety in festival situations, right? So I didn't like the intensity of those crowds. Yeah,
I don't like gigs like that now where you sort of 60,000 people jammed in a paddock. It just I do get a bit anxious and I'm like, fuck, I want to have space. That's why I love Dus, man, because Dus are always sort of capped at reasonable numbers for the environment and there's so many places you can go that I always feel like if I'm sort of just needing some rowy time at a doof, I can go and sit down. But
aggro at a doof. That's one thing. I'm not a big fan of doofs, you know that, but yeah, that's one thing I will give real good credit for is that there is no aggro at these things.
Yeah. That's what I was attracted to the culture of electronic music before I was actually attracted to the music.
Yeah.
Like one of the biggest things I noticed when I first started going to those, and I think I first started really going to those mainly because like we were playing gigs at them with Bearfoot, like home gathering and stuff and Manifest and that, and like just the culture attracted me, how nice people were to each other and like how much effort was put into the space itself as well as the music, the visuals and the decor and stuff. I think they do that like in no other music scene, and I think that's what makes it such an epic thing for me to go to is I just go and it's just this whole feast of things for your eyes and your ears and your brain. Like I love that shit. And yeah, people are really nice to each other too.
Yeah.
I think people used to be pretty nice to each other at Big Day Out and shit. Like Goldie was good. I think some of the other ones weren't so great, but Goldie was always pretty like everyone was just pretty stoked to be in a paddock watching some tunes with their mates.
I always found Soundwave to be sort of my people. I never found any aggro at Soundwave, but then maybe I wasn't looking in the right spots. But...
No, I never saw any. I went to Soundwave for like 5 or 6 years in a row or something, and I never
saw it. Never saw any people trying to like pick things.
No, because when you get a bunch of people coming together around a kind of type of music that they love, they're just fucking stoked to be there. They're just stoked to be there with a bunch of people with a big wall of speakers pummeling that sound into their brains. And I said to someone the other night, someone said, how do you think it's going to be when everyone goes back out? Like the first night all the pubs and everything are open. Do you reckon there's going to be heaps of fights and chaos? And I was like, no, I think people are just going to be really appreciative of the fact that they can go out and interact with people. And I think there's just going to be a whole bunch of actually pretty quiet pubs where people are just sitting around having a beer and it's chockers, but they're all just having a fucking chat.
I think they're going to be in shock. To be honest.
Yeah.
Like, hang on, we can hug people now, and we can have a beer next day, and we're in a space. And
I don't think there's going to be any aggro. I think everyone's just going to go out and be like really appreciative of things that we took for granted a lot before.
Yeah. So what would be like your first gig? Like Corona's finished and ScoMo's just gone. You know what? No more lockdowns. Everyone, we're all good to go now. The venues are reopened. What's your first gig that you would go to?
Oh, Band of Frequencies at Perugian Originals. Fucking so keen. So keen. Yeah, I love that band. I absolutely love that band. They're radical dudes playing radical music. And Peruge as a first gig back, I think would be mad. Just by the beach, under the fucking pandanus trees with all the crew. Yeah. Like that's one of my favourite gigs to go to on the coast as a punter and to play as well. Mm-hmm. Just because you're on the beach, you're under the pandanus trees, you got an esky of beers with your mates, and everyone's just stoked to be there. It's a vibe, and those dudes are the band, the kind of band I love to see in that kind of vibe. Amazing. So I'll be pretty happy if that's what it turns out to be.
One thing that really does suck is that the Easter weekend was actually supposed to be Barefoot's return to Perugian.
Yeah, I know.
As well.
And I was meant to be playing Rabbits too, so that was going to be a big fucking like mission like drive back in. You wouldn't
have to come back from Byron to do it. You would just have to come from like.
Yeah, it was. I'd already sussed it out. It was like a 2-hour drive. It was totally doable. I just would have had to leave Rabbits for like 5 hours on the Sunday, come do the gig and roll back and party on. The good thing was if it worked out that way, Rabbits runs on the Monday as well because it's the long weekend. So I still would have had it would have been worth the drive back out there. Like, yeah. But it was not to be. Barefoot at Peruge or Rabbits.
We're coming back though. We'll be time. Dude,
Yeah,
it has been nearly an hour of talking shit.
we do talk some shit. It's good that you don't get to talk shit to your mates at the moment. So when
No.
you do, you're like, yeah, fucking, what's been happening?
So your album comes out next Friday, April 24th.
Yep.
They can follow you on Zero Theory. You got
Yep.
you got Zero Theory.
I got it through Facebook page. The album will be coming out predominantly at the start on Bandcamp, I believe. It's coming out worldwide through Alta Records in Canada.
Yep.
Gabriel's been amazing with setting all of that stuff up. He's taken care of everything, and Bandcamp will be sort of the first drop, and then everything else will follow. It'll be iTunes, Spotify, everywhere. It'll be available everywhere.
I'll link it, and I'll link the sort of like the Bandcamp and that sort of stuff in this video after
Sure.
and put it in all the comments and whatnot. Everyone, if you want to experience some PsyDub, and like I'm not a huge like connoisseur of this sort of stuff. Like, I go to sleep listening to Deadmau5 when we're on tour, but basically that's basically it. And everyone's going, you listen to Deadmau5 to go to sleep? I'm like, yes. You got a problem with that?
Yeah.
No, but I really actually dig this album, dude. You've done
Thanks,
a great
man.
job on it. So
Thanks, man.
everyone go check it out. Ro, you hang on the line there, man. I'll have a chat to you after this because we haven't caught up in a long time.
Yeah, bro.
Everyone else, go check it out. Arrival on April 24th. Cheers.
Thanks.
If you enjoyed this podcast and the previous ones that we've been doing, please feel free to, if you haven't done so, subscribe and click the bell, ring the bell, whatever you got to do. We got more coming.